Salutation à tous. Greetings, everyone. I'm going to do this video. I'm going to show and prove to you this transatlantic slave trade is a myth. Not saying it didn't happen at all, but the large numbers of people, no, there's no way. I'm going to prove it. In 1910, there was about 9 million, they say. Their records show that there was about 9 million so-called black people. We know they were free Moors who was already here. Many of them was murdered brutally. Millions. Civilization, everything destroyed. That's what Columbus was all about. So they had, 14, 15, 16, 17, 14, 15, 16, in 300 years, they decided to form their own nation because they had a chance of having a majority because most of us was already killed. So in 1910, there was approximately 9 million, according to their records, so-called black people. All right? This is when the immigration started. The light white people from Europe. They didn't want the dark tainted ones. They wanted the lily white ones, certain parts of Europe. They started coming in from 1910 to 1924. They brought them to Ellis Island. Ellis Island. Yeah. I have some roots in Ellis Island. On my grandfather's from Ireland. I just put it like that. He's high. He's very light complected, and people say, "Well, how is he an African?" Well, he has some Irish in his roots. So they came through Ellis Island. Okay, here on his side. The dark part of me is right here. Okay, now this immigration was very, very abundant. Everything I'm quoting is their records now. I'm not making up any numbers. They said 1 million a year came through Ellis Island. So for 14 years, what would that make the population? Saying the population was negligible, they didn't have a majority, even in 1910, even after 300 years of murder and slaughter, they didn't have a majority in 1910. They was less than 9 million. We was 9 million. So they wanted to make sure they had a majority. So this is what they did. They started immigrating people into America at about a million a year. So fast forward to 1924. How many do you have? Let's say you had 8 million in 1910. I don't think it was that many. I really don't. Let's say they did have 8 million or even 9 million. Let's go ahead and say they was almost on par with us, but they wanted a clear majority. So that would take 14 years, 14 million, a million a year. How much is that? 14 plus 9, right? 24, 25 million. $14 plus 9, 23 million. All right? Now, our population from 1910 to 1920, according to their records, was only 1 million. In 10 years, from 1910 to 1920, we grew 1 million. So we were just 10 million then. Boy, we were been slaughtered big time. And one of the most notorious slaughter was in 1921 or 1920. They called it the Red Summer. Do your research. Don't believe nothing I say. I'm here to entertain you. Yeah, I'm here. I'm playing a video game. You watching me play the video game on your video game. So we all just entertaining each other. The Red Summer, every city in America was massacred, destroyed by the average citizen. It wasn't just the KKK. Everybody had a free will. They just say, hey, it's time to just chase them out. We was in our own neighborhood. The most prosperous people during that era. And they was jealous because they just didn't have what we had. The ability to prosper with adversity. So how do you deal with that competition? You kill them. Most people know about Tulsa. Yeah. You know about Tulsa. It happened during that time, but it was more than just Tulsa. It was all over this country. Do your research. At least 50 major cities documented, if they haven't taken it down. Because that's one thing they also been doing, destroying the records, the knowledge. Or transforming it in a way that you can never get to the truth of it. So, they have 23 million in 1924, and we don't even have maybe 11 million. So you see, that's when they stopped the immigration. They said, oh, we got it now. We got it now. But they still couldn't rule over us because we was a people who had our own identity. We had our own neighborhoods. We was living on our own land. So we wasn't in the U.S. jurisdiction. Those Moors know what I'm speaking about. And to prove that, go to the case of Dred Scott. Dred Scott proved that you have no jurisdiction to sue this man. We don't recognize you. Why? Because we was here when they got here. We wasn't part of the U.S. They hadn't did that yet. They hadn't made us a part of the U.S. They haven't immigrated us into the U.S. Not integrated, immigrated. There's no such thing as integration when it comes to people mixing with another people. Why would they want that? Even with the Europeans, they wanted the light complexion. They didn't want to taint their blood. So you talking about 30 years later, you done gave up and you want to taint your blood now? Oh, we ate all that up. No. No people want to taint their blood. No self-respecting people want to taint their blood. All right, let me go to my notes. So the large numbers of lily white people was there to offset the large growing Moors of freeborn. They call us freemen. Not because we was free from slavery, because we never been enslaved. So that's proof that the institution of slavery, the way they say it, is a myth. Now check out something else. I'm just getting started. When these whites came to Ellis Island, man, they had to be screened. They want to be sure they didn't have any diseases or no criminal element in them, or the terrorists. Because there was a lot of, what do you call, people who didn't like anarchy. There was a lot of anarchy back then. They didn't want any anarchists. So why would a large number of people be allowed to come to America? Or why would they go get all these so-called black people and bring them to America to work in their homes? To work in their homes, to cook their food, to be around them. And they didn't test them for health. They didn't care what kind of health they was in. I want you to think, people. Either we were all saints, or they knew we would cause no harm to them. They knew our nature, we wouldn't harm them. That's why we was immigrated from our own jurisdiction. You see the movie 12 Years a Slave? Yeah, that's how we was enslaved. Taken from our home in America and brought down south, from north to south. That was the immigration. But it wasn't total immigration. That was just to fit the narrative. You wouldn't, even today, if you have someone coming, a housekeeper, to live in your house, you want a health certificate, don't you? Who's gonna be around your children? You want a health certificate. Don't play with me, y'all. You can't play with me. You can't play with nobody who's thinking. So, since these people had their own land, as Dred Scott showed you, they had their own communities. They was not in the U.S. jurisdiction. They had no standing to even sue. So, what did we do? What did they do? They had the Brown versus Board of Education. Okay? 100 years later, after Dred Scott, approximately. And what did Brown versus Board of Education do? It brought in large-scale immigration. This immigration began to take place under the promise of integration and equality with whites, being a protected class under the 14th Amendment. You see that 14th Amendment there all the time. So these so-called black people are volunteering to immigrate to the U.S. It wasn't forced. You know, back in the day, man, this was around the same time as Dred Scott. They forcibly moved our ancestors, so-called Indians. The Trail of Tears, remember that? From Mississippi, because I got ancestors who was in that Trail of Tears. They moved from Mississippi onward That's how most people wound up in Tulsa. That was supposed to be their own territory, Oklahoma. Okay? And there's a lot of science in the name Oklahoma that I go into another time. And yeah. Let me get to the good part. So they didn't have to force them like they did back in the day. They got them to volunteer, immigrate into the U.S. jurisdiction. Because you gave up your property, you gave up your schools, you gave up your businesses, you gave it all up with the help of these colored people. Yeah, they had an organization they called the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. It wasn't nothing about you. They wanted to garnish favor from the whites who wanted this to happen, so they used them to do it. They didn't say the National Association for the Advancement of so-called black people. They say the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. They was one who benefited from that. Yeah, they started getting paid off in high offices and mayors of cities and things like that. They got paid off. But the majority, the so-called underclass, never got paid off. We were just walked over. The non-colored people, put it like that. Because that's two. Don't think that we all one race. No. You can go to South Africa and see that. That's a good example where the colored people are over the black people. Oh, it's different here. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the essence of it, people. They call it emancipation. And you go look up those words. It can mean immigration as well. Yes. Many synonyms for emancipation. So that's how I can always say everything's a lie. And if you don't know the truth, you will always be lied to. When would you stop being lied to? When you know the truth. When you know the truth, can't nobody lie to you. That's why the government schools are set up to keep you ignorant. Oh, public schools. Well, same thing. Okay. That was the essence of it. That was the essence of it. All right. I did it in good time, too. You might be able to get this video sooner than I thought, because I'm under 20 minutes. All right. So, peace. Peace, y'all. Okay. I'm in this video game. I hope you were entertained.